every American business out there, if you want somebody who knows how to handle pressure, who knows how to handle billions of dollars worth of equipment, who knows how to operate under fire, hire a veteran. We have an obligation. They fought over here. They've gone through these god-awful sands and deserts in the middle of a war. They're in godforsaken places out in Afghanistan. They shouldn't have to come home and fight for a job.
Vice President Joe Biden speaking to NBC's Ann Curry today in Iraq. Mr. Biden is in Iraq for the 8th time since he has been vice president. More than 1 million Americans have fought in the Iraq war in its 9 years and counting. But we are now down to about 13,000 American troops there as of today. And they are now leaving at a rate of 500 a day. In just a couple of weeks, they will all have left. And the Iraq war will not just be over, but our last American troops there will have come home. Merry Christmas. In recent days, we've got some new information as well about what to expect about the Afghanistan war. From a peak of about 100,000 American troops in Afghanistan this summer, 10,000 have been ordered home by the end of this year, and another 23,000 are due to come home next year. The U.S. Marine Corps planning that its combat responsibilities in Afghanistan will end next year altogether. Of course, as two of the longest wars in American history end in the case of Iraq, or maybe start to end in the case of Afghanistan, nothing ends, nothing changes about our responsibility to keep the promises our country has made to the people who have been fighting these wars in our name. One of those promises was made in 2003 when President George W. Bush signed into law something called the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Among its provisions, it told mortgage companies that if a mortgage company wanted to foreclose on the home of a service member who was on active duty, that mortgage company had to do some special precautions. They had to follow some special procedures, like, say, not using a default judgment to steal somebody's house out from under them just because they didn't show up for a court hearing about it. Because maybe it was hard to be at that court hearing in Pittsburgh while at the same time being in a foxhole in Fallujah. But as reported in the Financial Times this week, a watchdog at the Treasury has just reported that mortgage companies have basically been doing just that, illegally foreclosing on the houses of more than 5,000 active duty members of the U.S. military. The banks say they are looking into it, but so far the estimates are that Bank of America may have illegally taken the homes of more than 2,000 active duty U.S. soldiers, Wells Fargo nearly 900, Citigroup 700, and the list goes on. These are just the 10 largest. We have posted a list of them at mattoblog.com today if you want to check it out. J.P. Morgan is not included in this particular round, but J.P. Morgan had to pay a multi-million-dollar settlement this spring. When they got caught for doing this, they apologized for illegally seizing the homes of 27 active duty servicemen and women. The reason we've got this data is because of the part of the Treasury, the federal government, that oversees these banks and is responsible for enforcing this law. But now there's word that the crusading Attorney General of New York State, Eric Schneiderman, is also going after this because of a powerful state law in New York that gives New York as a state the jurisdiction to punish these banks in a case like this, too. Joining us now is Paul Rieckoff, founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, a veteran of the Iraq War himself. Paul, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you. My pleasure.
Obviously, this law was supposed to keep people on active duty from having their houses seized illegally in the first place. But is this after-the-fact enforcement now at least a step in the right direction?
It is, but this is crazy. This is absolutely outrageous. The idea that you're serving in Fallujah while your house is being foreclosed back home is just outrageous. I mean, it's disgusting. And it could be as many as 5,000 people. And what's important to note is you also can't take their house when they get home. The original provision was for 90 days, and we fought hard at IAVA in 2008 to make that now 9 months. Okay. So you've got another 9 months after you come home where you're supposed to be protected as well. So if these banks, did this, they broke the law, and they really put these folks in a bad position, potentially thousands.
We know from the rest of the mortgage crisis that a lot of the way that foreclosures happen with robo-signing and all the rest of it is just flagrantly irresponsible by the lenders. And essentially, this law was designed to give veterans a little extra protection.
Right.
Do you feel like taking an intensely punitive attitude toward this would be something that would make them take everybody more seriously?
They should.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're doing this to veterans, what are they doing to other folks?
Yeah.
Right? That's the big question here. And that should be the question around unemployment, around mental health. I mean, we're in many ways kind of like a canary in the coal mine for our society. Yeah. And if we're the folks that are America's heroes and we're getting treated like this, I think it should force all Americans to ask hard questions.
Yeah.
And I think this foreclosure issue, it runs deeper than that, too, because folks are coming home, and then they also have to move pretty frequently. We have a veteran named Sergeant Steve Inman in our organization who came home from Afghanistan. His baby was born while he was there. Got home and found out he had 2 months to move to Japan. He has to sell his house, sell his car. His wife's also pregnant and move to Japan, right? So that guy needs protection.
Yeah.
People like that need protection, and there are thousands of them that are serving in harm's way right now and shouldn't have to worry about if the bank is bolting their house while they're gone.
Paul, IAVA has had a lot of success legislatively since you were founded, but in particular this year, when nobody else has been able to get anything done in Washington, the only jobs bill that has passed this Congress was the Veterans Jobs Bill. The president today was in Scranton, and he was talking about overall legislative strategy. And he said that he thought he was finally getting to Republicans. And his example for that was your bill, was the Veterans Jobs Bill. What's your reaction to that?
I think he's right. I mean, it was the rare example of everybody in Washington getting along on something other than naming a post office, right? We had Republican chair of the Veterans Committee, Jeff Miller, on stage with Patty Murray, the Senate leader from the Democrats, on stage together. They issued a joint press release about this bill. And we've been fighting for this bill really going back 2 years. It provides urgent tax cuts. It's going to improve the transitional programs coming home. It's going to expand the GI Bill for veterans. It's a really critical bill. And it eventually went through unanimously, but it took a long time, and it was a hard fight. And it will be, like right now, it's the only jobs bill that went through. It's the only portion of the president's job package that's gone through. And it might be one of the only things they get done all year. So I think it is significant. Maybe it provides us some headway, but it also shows the power of veterans. Like, we're uniting, we're mobilizing, we've got the American people behind us. And if folks are looking in the coming years for places to cut, stay away from the VA. Yeah. Stay away from our stuff, because we are going to fight hard, and we're pretty good at fighting.
That case that Joe Biden was just making about all the reasons to hire veterans, also the reasons to watch how veterans get stuff done in Washington, because you guys are good at it.
Well, we're trying. And I think it's a sign for what's to come out of this community, not just in Washington, but in business and in community activism. There are a lot of incredible, dynamic leaders that are coming out of this community.
I agree. You're one of them, Paul Rieckoff.
Thank you.
Founder and executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. I have to say, you're looking excellent, too. Very trim these days, Paul.
Thank you. It was a lot of effort to get through all the security downstairs.
I understand. Yeah. Paul actually lit the tree himself. He just went like this. We'll be right back.